In the heart of rural Georgia on a scorching summer afternoon, a teenage boy with oil-stained hands and worn-out boots walked into a crumbling peanut factory just to drop off a part. No one paid him much attention, especially not the sharp-tongued CEO, Clay Whitstone, who saw only a poor black farm kid not worth more than a barked command. The factory's main machine had broken down, putting a multi-million-dollar contract at risk, and desperation made Clay do something reckless. He pointed at the boy and ordered him to fix it. What Clay didn't realize was that this farm boy wasn't just anyone. He was Malik Bennett, the son of one of the most powerful agricultural innovators in the country. And the building Clay thought he owned, it was leased from Malik's father. What began as a moment of casual disrespect quickly unraveled into a lesson in humility, legacy, and hidden influence. This is a story about what happens when the world underestimates the quiet strength of those it looks down upon and the stunning consequences that follow. It was a blazing summer afternoon in rural Georgia, the kind of heat that made even the wind feel like it had a fever. The sun beat down on fields of brittle grass and dust-caked roads. A low hum of cicadas filled the air as a massive delivery truck rumbled down a gravel path toward the industrial outskirts of town. There, like a forgotten relic of a better era, stood the once proud peanut processing plant, owned by Whitstone Industries. The building groaned under its age. Paint peeled from metal siding, a thin haze of smoke floated from the vents, and inside the air was thick with tension. The plant had been limping along for weeks, outdated equipment, overworked staff, and a CEO who refused to listen to anyone but himself. Today things hit a boiling point. A loud screech echoed across the factory floor as the main conveyor machine, an ancient rusted giant, shuddered violently and came to a grinding halt. Sparks flew from one of its side panels and a thick cloud of gray smoke puffed out, sending workers coughing and scrambling backward. "Shut it down," someone yelled. "It's already dead," another shouted. Supervisors gathered in a tight knot, frantic. Phones buzzed with incoming calls. The machine's failure meant the entire line had stopped. Peanut sorting, shelling, packaging, everything was frozen, and with it a high-profile contract with a national snack distributor was now hanging by a thread. And in the middle of the chaos, standing tall in a crisp white shirt and navy slacks, was Clay Whitstone, the CEO. His sleeves were rolled up just enough to pretend he wasn't above manual work, but he had no intention of breaking a sweat. His jaw clenched as he jabbed at his phone, pacing furiously. "No, I don't want excuses, I want if this deal falls through, it's not just on the factory, it's on my reputation." He turned toward his floor manager. "Why haven't we called maintenance?" "They're on the way, sir," the manager stammered. "But they're over an hour out." "Unacceptable," Clay snapped. "Find someone, anyone. I don't care if it's the janitor's cousin's dog. We need that machine running." At that exact moment, a dusty red pickup truck pulled into the lot. It creaked to a stop beside the delivery dock, drawing no attention at first. The door opened, and out stepped a tall, lean teenage boy. His jeans were faded, his shirt half-tucked, and his boots were stained with Georgia clay. Slung over his shoulder was a bag of tools, and in his right hand he carried a small box of industrial parts. This was Malik, 17 years old, quiet, observant, and completely unaware that in the next 20 minutes, he'd change the fate of everyone in that building. He walked toward the entrance, wiping sweat from his brow. He'd come to deliver replacement gears and a belt part his uncle, an aging technician from a nearby shop, had ordered 2 days ago. Nothing more. Malik pushed open the heavy doors and stepped onto the chaotic factory floor, blinking in the haze. Immediately he felt eyes on him, some curious, some tired, and a few downright unfriendly. He walked past clusters of workers until a sharp voice cut through the air. "You." Malik turned. Clay Whitstone was storming toward him, eyes narrowed, voice sharp. "You look like you know your way around tools. That machine's down, get on it." Malik looked around, confused. "I'm just here to drop this off," he said calmly, holding out the box. Clay waved the offer away. "I don't care why you're here. You've got oil on your hands and we've got a problem. You want to make yourself useful? Fix the damn thing." There was a long pause. Malik shifted his weight, then glanced at the machine, still billowing faint smoke, and then back at Clay. "Sir," Malik said evenly, "I think it's better if you wait for your maintenance crew. I just deliver parts." Clay took a step closer, his tone growing impatient. "You want to get paid? You fix it, or I'll find someone who will." The room fell silent. Machines no longer roared. Even the buzzing of the lights seemed to dim as every head turned to see what the boy would do. Some workers whispered quietly among themselves. "That ain't right," someone murmured. "He's just a kid," but no one dared speak out loud. Malik exhaled through his nose. He wasn't looking for a confrontation, but he wasn't about to be spoken to like a tool either. Still, something told him there was more going on here than a broken machine. He walked slowly toward the machine. Clay crossed his arms in smug satisfaction, already moving on to his next call. "Finally, took you long enough." Malik knelt beside the smoking panel, set down the parts he brought, and opened the tool bag. His fingers moved with practiced ease. He'd been repairing old tractors and grain sorters since he was 12. This wasn't unfamiliar. It was just bigger, louder, and made by people who'd never stepped foot in a farm. The conveyor's inner systems were clogged with gunked oil, the belt was shredded, and one of the motors had overheated. Malik whistled softly. The thing had been run too hard without a break, like the people working it. As he worked, he caught snatches of conversation behind him. "You see how Clay just picked him out like that? Didn't even ask his name. That boy's from out near Bennett Farms, isn't?" The name lingered in the air. Malik didn't respond. He just kept working. 10 minutes in, he replaced the belt. Another 5 and he'd rewired a fried circuit. He ran a quick test and watched as the motor hummed back to life. When he flipped the master switch, the conveyor groaned, rattled, and then roared into motion. A cheer broke out among the workers. Someone even clapped. Clay turned, surprised. "It's running." Malik stood, wiping his hands on a rag. "Should hold for now, but you need to give it a full overhaul. It's been overworked." Clay nodded, trying to regain control. "Well, lucky guess I suppose." Malik didn't reply. He was already turning to leave. "Wait," Clay called out again, more sharply this time. "You're not done. We've got more machines acting up. You think you can just fix one thing and walk away?" Malik paused in his tracks. He turned, calmly. "Before I do anything else, maybe you should find out who owns this place." Clay's brow furrowed. "What are you talking about? I own." Malik gave a faint smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. "No, you lease it." And with that he walked out, leaving behind a stunned silence and a room full of curious stares. Malik worked silently, the buzz of the factory dimming into the background as his hands moved with methodical precision. He'd found the problem within minutes: an overheated drive motor, a melted wire casing, and a jammed bolt stuck deep in the machine's side. The whole thing had been held together by sheer force of habit and desperation. Malik knew exactly what to do, and he wasn't rushing for anyone. Especially not for the man hovering over him like a storm cloud. "You better not mess this up, farm boy," Clay muttered under his breath, just loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. His voice had that edge, sarcasm dipped in condescension, the kind that tried to bruise pride without breaking the law. Malik didn't flinch. He'd heard worse from men with far less power. Just a few feet away, 2 factory mechanics leaned against a railing, watching him work. "Wait a minute," one of them said, squinting. "That kid looks real familiar." "Yeah," the other nodded slowly. "Ain't he one of Samuel Bennett's sons?" The words were whispered, but the effect rippled through those who heard. The Bennett name carried weight in these parts. Samuel Bennett wasn't just another landowner with tractors and barns, he was a quiet titan, owner of Bennett Agritech, the largest and most advanced agricultural technology company in the southeastern United States. His farms were a marvel of innovation: solar-powered irrigation systems, AI-monitored crop cycles, zero-waste process. He didn't show up in magazines or hold press conferences. Samuel Bennett preferred action over attention. While other men built brands, he built legacies. Washington lobbyists knew his name. State senators sought his approval, but most people had never seen him in person. His son Malik was even less known, until now. But Clay Whitstone didn't know any of that. To him, Malik was just a tall black kid in dirty boots, with calloused hands and a face that didn't belong in a boardroom. "Hey," Clay barked, impatient. "You done staring at that thing? Hurry up." Malik didn't answer. He just replaced a frayed belt and was finishing a careful rewiring job around the burned motor coil. He pulled out a new fuse from the parts box, secured it, and flipped a small switch on the side panel. The machine groaned, then hummed. Slowly the conveyor belt began to move again, smoother than it had in weeks. The roar of the machine returned, but this time it wasn't followed by smoke or sparks. It ran clean, precise, alive. All around the floor, workers froze, mouths half open. Did he just fix it?" Someone whispered. One of the supervisors blinked. "No way, that should have taken hours." Malik stood, brushed his palms on his jeans and slung the tool bag over his shoulder. His face remained unreadable, but his eyes scanned the crowd quickly. He had felt the shift in energy. Clay crossed his arms, trying to recover. Huh, he said dismissively. Lucky guess. Malik started walking toward the exit. Clay called out again, this time louder, trying to assert control. You're not done, we've got more problems. Don't think you're leaving just yet. Malik stopped in his tracks. He turned slowly, calmly. You might want to call the person who owns this place before giving me more orders, he said. Clay narrowed his eyes. I am the owner. A murmur rolled through the room. Malik gave a half smile, cool, composed and far older than his years. No, you're leasing this facility from a private investor. You don't even know who it is, do you? Clay's expression shifted. He opened his mouth, then closed it. What are you talking about? He said, now uncertain. You should check the lease, Malik replied. Your contract's with BGT Holdings, correct? Clay blinked. That name did sound familiar. It was the investment group that had stepped in 2 years ago to buy the old Whitstone factory when the business started sinking. Clay had retained operations as CEO, but the property and equipment had been quietly sold to cover debt. How do you know that? Clay asked, his voice now a little quieter. I know, Malik said, because my father owns BGT Holdings. The room dropped into stunned silence. You could have heard a screw drop onto the factory floor. The whispers from earlier now came in waves. That's Samuel Bennett's kid? And Clay just called him a farm boy. Man's about to eat his own shoe. Clay's face flushed red, part embarrassment, part disbelief. That's not possible. You sure about that? Malik replied. You can look it up, or you could just call him. He's expecting me back soon. One of the supervisors stepped forward nervously. Mr. Whitestone, I did see the name Bennett on the shareholder document a few months ago, but I didn't think you knew about this. Clay turned to him, voice rising. I didn't know, sir, I just assumed. Clay spun back to Malik. Why didn't you say anything? You didn't ask, Malik replied simply. And you didn't care to find out. Clay opened his mouth to speak again, but nothing came out. Malik adjusted the strap on his shoulder. I came here to drop off parts, not get involved in your operation. But I wasn't going to stand there and let people lose their jobs because your machine failed and your ego got in the way. Clay's jaw tightened. His power was slipping, fast. I'll let my father know the machine's fixed, Malik said. I'm sure he'll be happy to hear production's back up. Whether he keeps leasing to you after today, he paused. Well, that's up to him. He turned to go once more. But this time, no one stopped him. Clay stood frozen, surrounded by workers who now looked at Malik not as a delivery boy, but as something else entirely. A mirror of quiet power, proof that the world was shifting in ways men like Clay were no longer prepared for. As Malik exited the factory, the same dusty pickup truck awaited him. The sun was lower now, but the air still pulsed with heat. He climbed in, shut the door and drove off. But inside the factory, the whisper had already begun to grow louder. And it wasn't just about who Malik was, but what might happen next. Clay's assistant burst through the side office doors, his face red and slick with sweat, not from the heat, but from panic. Sir, he stammered, holding out a manila file. I just checked the property documents, cross-referenced the leaseholder registration, and the annual filings. He's right. The factory is owned by a shell company, listed under Bennett Strategic Holdings, a subsidiary of Samuel Bennett Industries. The words hit like a hammer. Clay's face went pale, his jaw slightly unhinged. Bennett? He echoed, as if the name physically stung his mouth. Just a few feet away, Malik turned back, calm as ever. His hands were still marked with grease, but his stance carried a quiet authority that filled the room more powerfully than any title ever could. Yeah, Malik said, Samuel Bennett is my father. He doesn't usually get involved in this kind of mess, but I do. Clay's confident posture buckled, his shoulders slumped, and he suddenly looked smaller, like a man realizing he'd just yelled at the pilot mid-flight. Wait, he stammered, forcing a half smile. I didn't mean any disrespect. You should have said something earlier. If I had known who you were, I didn't need to. Malik interrupted, voice calm but sharp. Respect isn't something you offer only when you realize someone has power. It should be given freely, to everyone, all the time. The air in the factory shifted. What had once been fear and indifference now sparked into something else. The workers, men and women who had been shouted at, ignored, overworked, began to murmur. Some nodded. A few looked at each other with raised eyebrows. For the first time in a long time, someone had said aloud what they'd felt for years and said it right to the boss's face. Clay looked around, the silence pressing in on him like a weight. "Look," he said awkwardly. "Maybe this got off on the wrong foot. I had no idea you were involved with the Bennett family. We could work something out." He forced a chuckle, stepping forward as if to shake Malik's hand. "This doesn't have to go anywhere. I mean, the machine's fixed now, right?" Malik didn't move. He looked Clay in the eyes, and what Clay saw in that gaze wasn't hostility, it was something far worse to a man like him. Clarity. "You already gave me everything I need," Malik said. "A first-hand look at how you run this place, how you treat people, how you talk to those who don't wear suits or carry your last name. Now wait just a second," Clay began, trying to recover his footing. "You're taking this out of context. This is a high-pressure environment. I talk tough because we have deadlines. That's how business works." Malik tilted his head. "Deadlines don't excuse disrespect, neither does pressure. My father runs 10 times the acreage you do, with fewer workers and more innovation, and he doesn't yell at people, he invests in them." Clay's assistant tried to melt into the background, embarrassed to be standing next to his boss. The floor managers, once loyal to Clay's orders, were now clearly unsure where their allegiance should lie. The power dynamic had shifted in a single afternoon, and everyone could feel it. One of the older machine operators, a wiry man with gray in his beard, stepped forward. "He's not lying," he said, voice steady. "You treat us like we're machines, Mr. Whitstone, like we break down for your inconvenience. Not because we're overworked. Nobody's had a proper lunch break in weeks, and every time someone complains you say the same thing. You want to eat or you want a job." Clay's face twitched. "Now's not the time." "No," the man said, cutting him off. "Now's exactly the time." There was a ripple of agreement through the room. Malik looked around at the faces, tired, weathered, hopeful. "This place could be something more," he said. "You've got skilled people, hard-working people, but they've been managed like liabilities instead of assets." Clay tried to laugh, though his voice cracked under the weight of the moment. "All right, Mr. Bennett Jr., you've made your point. Are you here to lecture me, or to make decisions?" Malik raised an eyebrow. "I can do both." Then he turned to the worker. "How many of you have been here over 5 years?" A dozen hands went up. 10 years. 6 more. 15. 3 people kept their hands raised. "Then this factory doesn't belong to just one man's name," Malik said. "It belongs to the people who keep it running." Applause broke out, not loud and thunderous, but slow and meaningful. It wasn't for show, it was for the truth. Clay watched it unfold in front of him, his grip on the room slipping like sand through his fingers. "This is still my operation," he muttered desperately. "The contract doesn't change that." Malik looked at him one last time. "Contracts are flexible, relationships are not. My father put trust in you to lead with decency, and right now you've lost that trust." Clay tried to respond, but Malik had already turned away. As he walked back toward the exit, a young worker ran after him. "Sir, Malik, what's going to happen now?" Malik paused. "We'll figure it out," he said, "but it starts with listening to the people who've been ignored. My father's all about innovation, but real change comes from the ground up." He glanced over his shoulder one last time. "Tell your coworkers, your voices matter. I heard them today, my father will too." And with that, Malik stepped out into the golden afternoon light, where the sun was dipping low over the fields of Georgia, casting long shadows across the concrete lot. Inside the factory, silence returned, but this time, it wasn't rooted in fear. It was the quiet before something better, something fairer, and far from being just a whisper, the truth had finally come out, and everyone heard it. The sun had barely set over the Georgia hills when Clay Whitstone slumped into his leather chair, staring out the wide window of his office. The factory behind him was finally quiet, though not in the way he preferred. Not a sound of production, not the hum of machinery, just silence. A silence that felt accusatory. He sipped from a sweating glass of whiskey, the amber liquid doing little to calm his nerve. His pride had taken a public beating, and every replay of the afternoon burned hotter in his memory. That boy Malik had made a fool of him in front of his entire staff. Worse yet, he had just learned that the boy was no mere farmhand. He was the son of Samuel Bennett. Clay cursed under his breath. "Should have known," he muttered. Those eyes, too calm, too sharp. His thoughts were interrupted by a buzz on his desk. His phone lit up with a number he didn't recognize. Atlanta area code. No. Hoping it was good news, or at least a distraction, he answered. Hello? A moment of silence, then a voice. Calm, deliberate and heavy with quiet command. Mr. Whitstone, this is Samuel Bennett. Clay sat up so fast he spilled his drink. His hand shot to his shirt to dab away the stain, but his voice trembled. Mr. Bennett, I'm so sorry. I had no idea your son was. If I had known, I'm not calling for apologies, Samuel said, cutting through the air like a blade through silk. I'm calling to inform you that we're ending our lease agreement. Clay's mouth went dry. Wait, what? You can't just do that. I can, came the measured reply, and I have. I gave my son permission to evaluate the culture at your plant. Based on his report, and some very candid feedback from your employees, I've decided we'll be shifting the facility's purpose. Clay stood up, gripping the phone tighter. You don't understand. That plant processes over 40% of our peanut output. Losing it could sink our entire Q3 projection. You'll destroy dozens of jobs. On the contrary, Samuel replied, we'll be converting the facility into a non-profit agricultural training center, focused on sustainable farming and skilled labor. Your former employees will be given the opportunity to retrain, reskill and work with dignity. You can't do this, Clay said again, voice rising. This is personal. It's not, Samuel interrupted. It's business. The difference is I don't tolerate disrespect in my. Click. The line went dead. Clay stared at the phone like it had betrayed him. He let it fall from his hand and bounce off the carpet. In the silence that followed, something else broke. Not a machine, not a deal, but the illusion Clay had carried for years, that his name alone made him untouchable. At that very moment, Malik sat on the edge of a dusty porch swing outside his family's farmhouse, watching the lightning bugs glow over the peanut fields. His phone buzzed. A message from his dad. Call made. All yours now. Proud of you. Malik smiled faintly. He leaned back, the swing creaking under his weight, and looked up at the stars, far clearer here than anywhere else in the state. Tomorrow the real work would begin. The next morning, news traveled fast. By 9, Whitstone Industries stock had dropped 3%, triggered by whispers of lease disruption and loss of key facility. Investors panicked. Local reporters picked up the story, and soon the headline spread. Teen fixes broken machine, reveals factory owner's disrespect, sparks major corporate shakeup. On social media, photos of Malik, grease on his hands, calm expression on his face, circulated with hashtags like Fixit, like Malik, and Respect First. In a small diner near the factory, workers watched the TV mounted on the wall, stunned. One woman turned to her coworker. I never thought I'd see Clay get knocked down a peg. Not just knocked, the man replied. Buried. That boy. He flipped the script. In the Whitstone headquarters, Clay's phone buzzed again. This time it was his head of PR. Clay, we've got a problem, the woman said. That kid, Malik, he's being interviewed by the Georgia Ledger tomorrow. They're doing a whole piece on labor practices in southern factories. Clay groaned. Can't we stop it? You're not in a position to stop anything right now, she said dryly. Frankly, if I were you, I'd start crafting an apology, a real one. Clay hung up, then slammed his fist onto the desk. He had played hardball with the wrong family. No, not just the wrong family, the wrong son. A boy who wasn't asking for status or attention. A boy who simply demanded respect and earned it without raising his voice. Meanwhile, Malik and Samuel sat side by side at a long wooden table in their home office. Paperwork was spread out between them. This, Samuel said, pointing to a blueprint, is the new floor plan. We'll need solar panels here, upgraded cooling systems there, and most importantly classrooms, for welding, mechanics and agritech. Malik nodded. Can we get the workers involved in the redesign? Let them shape it. Samuel's face creased with pride. You're thinking like a leader. Malik shrugged. Just thinking like someone who listened. Samuel leaned back, studying his son. You know, I didn't expect all this to happen when I sent you down there. I didn't either, Malik replied, but I'm glad it did. By the end of the week, the facility had closed for renovations, but for the first time, workers didn't leave bitter or unemployed. They left with promise. Each was handed a letter, an invitation to return in 60 days, as a participant in the new Bennett Agricultural Innovation and Training Center. Free education, full benefits, a voice in the process, and just like that,
What was once a place of sweat and silence became a symbol of rebirth. All because a teenager in muddy boots fixed more than just a broken machine. He fixed the system that broke it. Weeks had passed, but the transformation was undeniable. Where the old Wheatstone plant once stood, weathered, gray and soaked in years of tension, a brand new facility gleamed under the Georgia sun. The worn exterior had been power washed and painted in earthy tones, reflecting its new purpose. Rows of solar panels now crowned the roof, humming quietly as they collected power. Native wildflowers had been planted around the entrance, replacing the dust and gravel that used to choke the earth. A fresh sign stood proudly at the gate, carved in thick wood and polished smooth, Bennett Center for Agricultural Innovation. Inside, the air no longer smelled of overheated metal and stress. Instead, it carried the scent of fresh timber, clean air, and the quiet promise of change. Gone were the rigid time clocks and hollow motivational posters. In their place were open classrooms, training bays and lab spaces where curiosity bloomed. Malik walked the halls, wearing his signature work boots, jeans and a neatly pressed button-down shirt. A name tag rested on his chest, not because he needed to introduce himself anymore, but because he insisted on being treated like everyone else. "Mr. Bennett," a teenager called out from a workstation. "This motor's acting up again." Malik smiled. "Well, that motor won't fix itself. You tell me what's wrong." Across the room, a group of young adults huddled around a 3D printed model of a vertical farming system. They weren't just learning how to fix machines anymore, they were learning how to design the next generation of them. Many of the students were from towns that had been overlooked for decades. Some had dropped out of school, some had records. All had stories, and all had potential. One of them, Andre, had once worked under Clay at the old plant. He had been labeled as slow, unmotivated. Today he was leading a training session on automated irrigation systems. Another, Jada, was preparing to pitch a community greenhouse project to a city council in a neighboring town. The building didn't just give people skills, it gave them dignity.
One afternoon, as the golden light poured in through the wide factory windows, Malik stood near the old conveyor machine, the very one he had fixed on his first visit. It had been cleaned, restored, and repurposed as a training tool. As he checked a student's wiring, he felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to see a familiar face, Miguel, a former Wheatstone worker, his hard hat tucked under his arm. "You ever plan this?" Miguel asked with a crooked grin. "Coming in like that, flipping the whole place upside down?" Malik chuckled. "Not exactly. I just came to drop off a part." Miguel looked around, eyes scanning the bright classrooms and clean halls. "But look what you built. This is something." Malik nodded slowly. "Sometimes you don't just fix the machine," he said. "You fix the system that keeps it breaking." Miguel smiled, then reached into his pocket and handed Malik a folded-up note. "From one of the old crew, he asked me to give you this." Malik opened it. The handwriting was rough, but heartfelt. "Thank you for seeing us. For not walking away like everyone else did. You didn't just change this place, you changed our lives." He folded the note carefully and tucked it into his pocket. "I'll keep that one," he whispered. Meanwhile, far away in a corporate high-rise in Atlanta, Clay Wheatstone sat at the end of a long conference table, staring at the quarterly reports. Red ink bled across the page like a wound. His company had managed to stay afloat, but barely. Investors were nervous. Some deals had evaporated. The once confident man now kept his voice low and his posture reserved. One of his advisors set a folder down in front of him. "New competitor in the ag tech space," she said. "Bennett Center. They're getting attention, not just local. National grants, innovation awards, even TED invitations." Clay didn't say a word, just stared out the window, a mirror image of the man who once barked orders over a broken machine. Back at the Bennett Center, a ribbon-cutting ceremony was underway for a new wing, the Community Futures Lab. Samuel Bennett stood beside his son, hands clasped behind his back, a rare public appearance for the media-shy billionaire. He gave Malik a quiet nod as cameras clicked. When Malik stepped up to the mic, he took a breath, looked out at the crowd of students, farmers, families and workers, many of whom had once worn oil-stained uniforms in a crumbling factory. "I won't make a long speech," he began. "I just want to say this. A machine only works when all its parts are respected. So does a community." The crowd clapped. Samuel smiled faintly. "This place," Malik continued, "was once about production. Now it's about purpose. And just like any seed, all it needed was the right soil to grow." Later that evening, As the sun dipped behind the silos and painted the sky with streaks of orange and lavender, Malik walked the fields behind the center. He stopped beside a small garden that had been planted by the first class of students, rows of kale, peppers, sunflowers and strawberries. In the middle was a plaque that read, "Planted not by power but by purpose." A soft breeze stirred the crop. Malik ran his fingers along the sun-warmed leaves. He had come here to drop off a part, to help his uncle, but he had left behind something far greater, a legacy that wasn't written in blueprints or bank statements, but in people. This was more than a rebuilt facility, it was a new root system, one that reached deep, broke through old soil and promised harvest for generations to come. And at the center of it all, stood a boy who fixed a machine, and in doing so, helped the world start working better too. In the end, this wasn't just a story about a broken machine, or a hidden identity. It was about how quickly we judge people based on appearances, and how true power doesn't always come from titles or wealth. It comes from character, integrity, and quiet confidence. Malik didn't need to brag about who his father was. He let his actions speak, and in doing so, he exposed the cracks in a system that had ignored hard-working people for too long. His story reminds us all that greatness can come from unexpected places, and respect should be given, not demanded. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you or made you think twice about how we treat others, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Hidden Realities for more powerful true-to-life stories like this one. Comment below, have you ever been underestimated because of how you looked or where you came from? We'd love to hear your experience. Until next time, remember, sometimes the quietest voices make the loudest impact.